but I could cope with all the changes in my life, 'cause I had a mate lend a hand. My mate took the weight as the years rolled on. With a vice-like grip, I just smoothed on and on, 'cause I had a mate to lend a hand. You gotta work, mate, you got a mate for life.
Kellogg's Rice Krispies chocolate treats. Considerably easier than ABC.
The continuous sweep. 1/100th of a second chronograph. A world first from Seiko. Seiko, the measure of greatness.
This Christmas, give him a gift that will help bring you a little closer. The revolutionary Gillette Sensor for a shave that is unsurpassed.
Run out of coffee? Then fill up at an Esso shop with a 100-gram jar of Nescafe for just £1.48 plus 2 free Kit Kats.
New McVitie's Light Digestive is made with 25% less fat. But it still has all the taste.
Always the same restaurant? Yeah, I thought we had this thing under control.
What?
Can we afford another scandal?
Even the children have started to ask questions.
I'm sorry. You wouldn't happen to be Italian?
Yes, him.
Opera lover? It's always Italians.
Has she talked offshore investment yet?
I think we should leave before the paparazzi get here.
Which one's the kitchen?
Golden roasted, richer, smoother, Nescafe Gold Blend.
I don't know why I let you do that.
Because that's...
You serve better coffee.
Besides, I love you.
Now we meet Trevor Jones, a disabled ex-Royal Navy pilot who wants to fly solo across the Channel in The Human Factor.
This is the story of a man struggling for his independence. For 6 years, Trevor Jones was a helicopter pilot in the Royal Navy. In 1987, he helped pluck Richard Branson and Per Lindstrand from the ocean as they crashed at the end of their transatlantic balloon crossing.
A body in the water. Just one.
We were quite close in. There were lots of helicopters and aircraft all vying for position round and round in circles, and we didn't have a winch man on board. So the flight commander climbed into the back and lowered the strop for Richard to climb into, which is quite a difficult thing to do if you're cold and frightened and have never done it before. And it must have been terrifying, absolutely.
The courage of Branson and Jones grabbed the headlines. There are different types of courage, of course. Often, it's the explosive type of bravery, the reaction in an instant that wins the medals or captures the headlines. Trevor's is a different type of courage. It's an everyday bravery that begins when he wakes from his drug-induced sleep every morning of his life. For Trevor Jones is now paralyzed from the chest down. He uses his shoulder muscles to move his arms. Only his left arm has any real strength in it. He lives in a ground floor, specially adapted flat in South London. In 1988, while representing the Royal Navy, he broke his neck in a skiing accident.
Something inside me knew that this was really bad. And you know, I was just hoping that it was a broken leg or a broken arm, and I was just hoping, but deep down I knew that that it was a lot worse. I'm sure I said to Nick, I don't think I'm going to walk again. I'm sure I said it then.
That early?
Yeah, even though I didn't realise I'd had a spinal cord injury, I just knew.
He was flown to hospital by helicopter here at Innsbruck in Austria and later to Stoke Mandeville. Several times it was touch and go.
And I remember waking up, coming out of this machine, looking up at the doctor and saying, what's wrong, what's happened? Still thinking, oh, he's going to tell me it's a broken leg. You know, I want it to be a broken leg, and they wouldn't tell me. I think he said, no, it's not your leg, or no, your leg's not broken. And then I learned later that that's when my heart stopped. And the doctor had injected something into my heart to get it going again. And I didn't regain consciousness then until after the operation. Once the an alarm went off above my head, and I'd sort of dozed off, and I woke up to this nurse screaming from across the room, saying, Trevor, Trevor, you must breathe, you must breathe. And she said it just like that, and I'll never forget it. And I stirred, and I realised that I was on this ventilator, and I realised I had to make the first effort to get the air. And it was training me, my muscles, which was still working, to work. And but I had consciously to make that effort. And then I realised that I was on that knife edge between life and death, and that it was up to me to ensure that I kept to the right side. And I realised then that I really wanted to live, and I realised how precious life was.
Today and every day, Trevor Jones needs a full-time carer to help him survive.
I am dependent on my carer for my life, and she's very much my hands and feet in many respects. Everything's geared up for me to do as much.
It's been a learning experience for me. And it can be very demanding, from being a secretary to a carer to a mechanic, everything really. Things that he can't do, I have to do.
But Trevor can drive his specially modified van.
Because he's young and he's ambitious, I mean, I quite enjoy just being his shadow, really, just doing everything he's doing, because he's got such a great personality and his outlook on life.
Trevor's the oldest of 4 brothers. His father's a successful businessman, his mother a physiotherapist.
He's always been a very independent young man, even from a small boy, like 4 and 5 years old. He used to organise other children into activities, and this carried on right through his school career. Even in prep school, he was always captain of this and that. Very, very popular with all his own school-age boys and girls. And not much of an academic, very much of an outdoor man right from the word go.
When he was 14, his parents split up. He went to board at Gordonston School at the same time as Prince Andrew.
At Gordonston, all his potential was fulfilled. He excelled in every sport that he took up, and proceeded to captain most of the teams by the time he was there. He's never ever been any trouble, a very cautious person, never took risks unless they were calculated and examined first, and accidents happened to his brothers, not to him. So it was of an extra shock when this particular accident happened to Trevor. My physical reaction to the shock of the news was to collapse, really. And then it was a sort of conscious hysteria as each fact came to my head. Oh, he'll never fly again. And then 2 minutes later, oh, he'll never sail again, and so on, right through. Every thought I had was, oh dear, Trevor will never do that again. And I cried and cried and cried with this knowledge.
But Trevor was determined that he would do as much as he could for himself. He would fly again, for instance, with the help of a specially designed microlight.
Ever since my accident, I've been told, you know, you can't drive a car again, you can't come on this course, you can't stay in this hotel, you can't come to this theatre. And so the whole time I've been proving them wrong, and yes, I can fly an aeroplane again.
He's using it to publicise the trust he's set up to focus on those disabled in sporting accidents. Friends such as Richard Branson have helped him just as he had once helped them.
You want me? Yeah.
I saw Trevor quite soon after his accident, which only took place a week after he picked me out of the North Sea. And I must admit, my initial feeling was I wish he hadn't survived the accident. You know, somebody who was that fit and that healthy to suddenly, you know, be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, with such injuries, with so badly paralysed, and whose whole life had been sort of rugby and skiing and helicoptering and so on. It almost seemed cruel that he was still around.
Have you at any stage told him that?
I haven't. I never felt until I saw him today that confident enough to tell him that. I mean, it's, you know, seeing him today, the wonderful smile. I mean, he just looks, happier than any normal person I've ever come across.
Happiness for Jones is the degree of independence he can achieve. Some situations are more difficult than others, when he travels by train, for instance.
I mean, there are times when I can't do something that I want to, I just can't reach something, and I think, you know, damn it, you know, where's Tanya?
Can somebody give me a hand to get on?
Somebody, you mean down?
Is this the train to...
But what do you want to take you out of the station? I don't know how the station looks like.
The ramp by the train so I can get out.
He's trying to travel to Ipswich, where his microlight is being designed. The solution is to put him in the guard's van, until he objects.
Blast this country, what the hell are we so backward? Why don't we get everything made accessible over here? It was something I had to prove to myself and prove to other people that I wasn't written off, and I'm not written off, and I can fly an aeroplane just like I could before, despite my disability, and it became an overriding passion that I was going to fly again, and nothing was going to stop me.
For 9 months, by rail and road, Trevor Jones travelled to Ipswich to consult David Cook and the team who built it, under his supervision.
This is a standard aircraft, and what I intend to do for you...
I mean, it had to be a microlight because of the simplicity of the aircraft. There's just an engine and an on-off switch, and not much else, so I don't have a problem with levers and switches and all over a big cockpit.
This side, with all approved parts.
After his accident, Trevor Jones had many months to explore what the future held for him. Would he have to go to a home for the disabled? He visited a number.
inside were mostly elderly men from the war who obviously had nowhere else to go but had been there most of their lives. And the ward, which they showed me, which is where I would stay, was crowded. The beds were probably 6 foot apart, and I was there at about midday. There were still people waiting, queuing to get up, and the smell was putrid. I mean, I couldn't believe this place existed in 1990 or 89 or whatever it was. And the worst thing was that I was going through the halls, and I came across a young man at my age who had left Stoke Mandeville some weeks before me.
Do you remember what you said to each other?
Yeah, I do very clearly. He said, because he's a really funny bloke, big black man, Cockney accent, and he said, "Trev," he said, you don't want to come here, mate." He says, "Living hell." He said, "Stay away, go right back out those doors, don't you come back again."
With his computers, voice-operated phones, custom-built wheelchair and van, Trevor Jones is privileged, and he knows it. But he has fought for everything he has.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to prove that you can live a completely normal life in a wheelchair with. There's a lot of people more severely paralysed than me, but with limited movement, you can lead, to all intensive purposes, a perfectly normal life. You just need a certain set of basic needs.
And friends, of course. Some of his friends, such as Jane Hudson, he gained during his months at Stoke Mandeville. Jane was his physiotherapist. A committed Christian, she helped to give him hope.
I did feel completely desperate, and with her I sort of explored the love of God, and I drew comfort from this at that time, and I read and I learned and understood things from the Bible which had passed right over my head as a boy at school.
I just wanted to show him God's love, which I think is really important for everybody to know.
Do you think it was, I mean, he was so helpless when you were with him. Was it that he would have grasped at anything, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, he told me that he had thought about God before, and I think maybe this was something that really brought him to a grinding halt and made him sort of look at the way his life was going and what it all really meant. I think there were times when he was really down and he thought, what's going to happen, but his character, and I'm sure he really, sort of did look to God and sort of think, well, I have got a life and it's worth going on, and I can do all sorts of things.
Trevor Jones passed all the tests thrown at him and was given his licence to fly in October.
Charlie, Mike's lining up.
Roger. As Tanya watched, he made his first solo flight.
I've been flying solo with a shadow person in the back, but really the biggest difference is the handling of the aircraft. It's much lighter and much more sensitive. But yeah, being solo, back solo in the air on my own, I mean, great, really, tremendous. When I'm flying that aeroplane, then in no respects am I confined by my disability whatsoever. And there was one moment that I'll never forget, and it was after a flight that I came down. I was so ecstatic, and I literally tried to get out of the aircraft, and I completely forgotten that I was paralysed, and there was this sudden sort of sadness came all over me when I realised I'd have to wait for my team to come and lift me out.
He immediately set out to fulfill a challenge for himself and for the Trust, to become the first tetraplegic to fly the English Channel. Only a week later, at Headcorn Aerodrome in Kent, 32 other pilots turned up to support him, to fly with him. Trevor arrived early.
Brief at 10:15 and get airborne as quickly as possible. Have a plate of chips in France and then come back again before it gets dark.
You nervous?
Excited. Yeah. No, I'm excited. I really just want to say thank you to everyone for turning up today. I know people have come from all over the country to be here today and fly with me, and many of you have spent months raising money for my trust. If I could take...
Behind the scenes, the talk was of search and rescue, just in case Trevor or anyone else went down in the icy water.
If Trevor comes down, I'd like the film crew aircraft to stay obviously as far away as possible, and we will then take charge of the search and rescue effort on the scene. Brian will come up on guard and flash up Manston's SAR if he isn't already airborne, which he may well be, and we'll continue on from there. Just listen out on whatever frequency. We won't chop frequency. Listen out on whatever frequency we're working at the time, and we'll play it by ear.
So how long will Trevor be able to survive in the water, do you think?
That is a very good question. We intend to dispatch the diver at the same time as he hits the water, so we don't envisage him being in the water for more than a couple of seconds. That's the plan.
Hey, Jane. See you the other side, Trevor? Yeah, have a good trip.
Yeah, you have a good trip too.
Thanks. I haven't seen you for ages.
I know.
Oh, are you going to give me a kiss?
No.
The armada of microlights began to wobble into the sky at midday. Trevor Jones took off soon after 1 o'clock. He touched down safely in France 50 minutes later.
Well done, you. Congratulations. Huh? What is it like? Fantastic.
Congratulations, Trevor.
Amazing trip.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
There you go. Come on.
It was. No, that was. I've done. No, there's the finest hours flying of my life. No doubt about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Better than your time in the Navy?
Absolutely, yeah. I can't believe it. Over the channels, brilliant. Coasting out, best bit, coasting out into the channel. Yeah. Loved it.
Didn't take long either, did it, really?
It was forever, actually. It was, suspended. Time stood still. Brilliant.
Any difficult moment at all?
No, just lovely weather. It was great to catch the tiger moth in the corner and then the lynx. Yeah.
Did you see anybody else out there?
No, I could hear a lot of chat ahead, but oh my God.
What's that, Trev?
What's happened?
What it was news that a friend, Peter Keel, had crashed his microlight and died in the channel.
very, very sorry. I'm sorry for Peter, for his family, and I'm praying for you all now. And I always will. I will think of Peter for the rest of my life, and what's happened today will make me more determined than ever to make sure that the trust works for those people who need its help.
Despite the tragedy, Trevor Jones gritted his teeth and got on with what he sees as his job. He took off again, bound for England. It was what Peter would have expected of him.
He was absolutely determined to prove everybody wrong, that it was possible for somebody with his horrendous injuries to fly again. And now he's proved he can do it.
Finding yourself in a wheelchair, even if you're fairly elderly, is quite an eye-opener. For a young man, I think you'd have to say he has changed. You have to say that he has become more sensitive to the needs of others.
Because of the faith that I have, and it's a new faith, something that has been given to me since my accident. Strange to say it, but I do feel that my life now is in good hands, and that I am leading it in the right direction.
And we continue this Sunday lunchtime with a local bulletin of TVS News in just a moment.
So, Mrs. Forbes, your husband's a bit of a ladies' man.
No.
Fond of a drink or two.
He's teetotal.
Shame. Any gambling debts?
He never takes risks.
Hardly a rogue, is he? So, what are the grounds for this divorce, then?
Well, I sent him out for some after-dinner mints, and he bought... Well, let's just say they weren't Bendix.
Ah, mental cruelty.
Bendix of Mayfair, Britain's finest mints.
Well, what do you think, Jeeves?
Sir?
The Arctic Wonder, our new cooler whatnot.
May I inquire what you're proposing to do with it?
It's for the jolly old Croft original.
If I might caution you, sir.
A drop of the chilled Croft is absolute nectar. Everyone at Stiffy Bings do lapped it up. The trouble with you, Jeeves, is that you're too stuck in your ways.
But not quite in the Ice Age, it would appear.
Chilled Croft Original. One instinctively knows when something is right.
Thanks, Mum.
Who cares that you find just the right present?
The continuous sweep. 1/100th of a second chronograph. A world first from Seiko. Seiko, the measure of greatness.
No, you can't put that in there. It's fine china.
Yes, I can. Wedgwood approved Finish Ultra because it cleans and cares for patterns like this.
Says who?
Says here. Okay.
Wedgwood? Brilliant cleaning starts with Finish.
Forget the usual stocking fillers this Christmas. New low call from Vodafone is a low user tariff with low price connection, low price line rental and affordable phone purchase. Call charges are higher, but then you'll only be using the service when you really need to. New low call from Vodafone. When you can't phone, boom!
Save a whole pound on Safeway toffee and pecan cheesecake. Nutty, naughty, and only at Safeway.
Your legs could stay silky smooth for weeks when you switch to the new Braun Silk Appeal Duo. The secret is in Braun's uniquely adjustable multi-disc system, varying the tweezer action to remove even very fine hairs. Try the new Braun Silk Appeal Duo. You'll love the result.
£100 worth of shopping vouchers absolutely free. The Sweet Shop Superstore and Just Leather are giving away fabulous Tesco shopping vouchers worth an unbelievable £100 on all stock sweets from £799. And that's not all. There's 3 years interest-free credit with no deposit and nothing to pay until January 93. Plus at least £100 part exchange on your old sweet. We've thousands of sweets in stock from £299 to £3,000. We're virtually offering you Christmas on a plate.
Agenda today discusses Sunday trading and housing in the Urban Development Bill and takes a nostalgic look back at the past 11 years of the programme. That's with Mai Davies after the TVS News.
Good afternoon. The news for the entire TVS region this lunchtime. Angry villagers who'll be most disrupted by the new M3 roadworks around Winchester have this morning been meeting their MP Gerald Malone. The member for Winchester has promised to pass on their views to the government as work begins on the missing motorway link. Nigel Burwood reports.
The missing link of the M3 will slice right through the two communities of Compton and Shawford. Winchester's MP, Jerry Malone, has already been lobbied by angry residents, and today was another opportunity for them to press home their concerns. The parish council is leading the campaign to make the motorway more friendly.
Well, the main concerns of the parishioners are the noise levels and the landscaping. The minister has asked us, through Jerry, to make representations on certain aspects of this that he may be able to help us with. And we've asked Jerry to come down and actually see with his own eyes what's happening.
The MP spent more than an hour listening to the complaints of the few people who don't look forward to a new stretch of motorway.
Well, naturally, there's tremendous disruption, and some of them don't feel that undertakings have been implemented. Why I'm here today is to get a shopping list of what they want to see done, and I'll take that straight to the Department of Transport at the beginning of the week.
It's clear that over the next 2 years, the people of Compton and Shawford will keep Jerry Malone MP pretty busy relaying their views to the government. Nigel Burwood, TVS News.
4 people were rescued from a fire at a hotel in Folkestone during the night. The 3 men and a woman were staying at the Warwick Hotel in Bouverie Road. And in Brighton, an investigation is underway into how it started. That's into a fire in Montpellier Road from which 2 people were led to safety. The wife of a man who was found lying unconscious in his burning Southampton bedsit has been released by police. She was arrested yesterday after her husband was rescued from the house in Bellevue Terrace at Portswood. There are calls on the Isle of Wight for a full inquiry into how important council records turned up on a waste tip. Council officials have been sifting through tons of rubbish after it was discovered that documents dating back to the 19th century had mistakenly been sent for shredding. Val Anderson, the leader of the Liberal Democrats on the Conservative-run council, is seeking a meeting with council officers to see what went wrong. A 20-year-old London man will appear before Bournemouth magistrates tomorrow charged with robbery and firearms offences. It follows a £250,000 raid at Westover Jewellers in the town in September 1991. An appeal has been launched to help equip Eastbourne's new lifeboat. The new vessel is due into service in July. It will replace the current Duke of Kent lifeboat and travel at twice the speed. It'll cost nearly £700,000, but on top of that, several thousand more is needed to install radio and other navigation aids. Eastbourne's lifeboats have saved more than 600 people in the 150 years the service has been running. And that's it from me. I'll be back with an update at 6:35 this evening.
Now the weather forecast, and today will be mostly cloudy but milder, with the chance of a little drizzle here and there. Temperatures will be up around 10 degrees Celsius in moderate southwest winds, and it'll be fresh at times on coasts. Tonight it'll be rather cloudy with mist on the hills and occasional drizzle. Temperatures will be no lower than 7 degrees Celsius with moderate to fresh southwest winds. And there's little change in the outlook for tomorrow because it will be mostly dry and cloudy but with some brighter intervals inland. Now on TVS, Mai Davies with the latest regional issues in Agenda.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Agenda. Well, a mixed bag today, including housing, Sunday trading and a special report not by, but about this man. Yes, our parliamentary editor, Brian Shallcross. But first, good news for people who live in leasehold properties, many of whom have for years suffered at the hands of unscrupulous owners. The Housing and Urban Development Bill currently being debated in the Commons could put an end to the horrors of overcharging and inadequate maintenance. If successful, the bill could give 750,000 people the freehold of their homes. This report from Brighton by Peter Clark.
Brighton is a town with its fair share of leasehold disputes. A few years ago, a leasehold association was set up. Needless to say, it's flourishing. There's no shortage of aggravation and pettiness.
If anybody wants to have a cat in the building, they have to get permission of the managing agents under the lease. Well, that was just general. But now they are charging them a licence to have a cat in the building.
Brighton's Housing Advice Centre is the mailing address for the Leaseholders Association, chaired by Yvonne Gibbs. It's a mailbag that exposes many of the dodges of landlords.
Under the Housing Act, you are allowed to have sight of the receipts for the expenses, for the maintenance. Well, it's very difficult to get the managing agents to let you look at them. Some of them just find some excuse why you can't look at them. Another one is the insurance. You're supposed to be able to look at the insurance policy. Well, there have been cases where they have not been allowed to. They've even been in court cases.
They may charge you maintenance and not spend the money. They may not clean the public ways, for instance. Consequently, you're walking up and down in rather dirty circumstances. They may carry out works which are, in fact, the landlord's responsibility under the terms of the lease. And then when the works are finished, they then bill you for them. And you write back and say, well, this is not covered by the terms of the lease. Now, the landlords have got a habit of taking the terms of the lease that are advantageous to them, and any terms of leases which seem to be advantageous to the tenant are usually ignored.
Leaseholders pay a maintenance contract, but often it does not cover painting, decorating, cleaning and insurance.
They'll say it all needs decorating or painting. Whether it does or it doesn't, they have the last word. They send in the estimates, probably some friends of theirs or a couple of cowboys, and it doesn't last long.
And that, says Mrs. Gibbs, is one way in which landlords cash in. One victim leaseholder asked not to be identified.
The first 3 winters, I was inundated, absolutely inundated with water. I had a row of buckets the length of the kitchen because the whole ceiling was split from end to end. We actually arranged a meeting with the freeholder, my solicitor and I, and her solicitor around a big table, and we said the place is inundated.
Yes,
she said, you'll have to wait, I haven't got any money. So we just went away and had to wait.
Backing the freehold-leasehold bill is Eastbourne MP Nigel Waterson.
Assuming most of the flats qualify under the Act, then if 2/3, 66% of the people in a block want to buy the freehold, then they can go ahead and do it, basically speaking. And I think that is important, because then they will be able to run things themselves, and you'll get away from the problem you have at the moment, where people have short periods left on their leaseholds, say 40, 30 years, and are unable to sell, and even just as badly, unable to get a mortgage.
Come the day people become freeholders, what are the problems?
Well, the problems, they have to find a good managing agent, which they may or may not do, and also that you find that once they have become freeholders, they often fight amongst themselves. One person wants something done, the other doesn't, and then they don't agree, and that can be a difficulty. Or they form a company, and if it's a large estate, you find there's little Hitlers absolutely lording it all over everybody. And they're worse than they were off before.
It means that all the flat dwellers in that
have a share.
Then become freeholders.
They become freeholders.
It is then their responsibility to do all the maintenance work.
Which means that they can have a meeting and they can know that the estimates they're getting from builders are genuine and fair estimates. They can carry out works when they know they can afford to do them, and not at the whim of some freeholder that may be a little hard up at any given time and decides that let's have the roof done, £60,000, you know, and there'll be an extra little 5,000 in it for me. So you can sort of adjust the time when you spend the money.
Frank Lee and his colleague committee members will continue to receive the problems of leaseholders, but it's fair to point out that landlords have complaints against leaseholders. Meanwhile, the bill, which will be finalised in the spring, is sure to get a warm welcome.
Well, Sunday trading comes back into the news next week when the European Court gives its ruling on a number of questions put to it by the House of Lords. Whatever the outcome, it's now estimated that 140,000 shops open every Sunday in England and Wales, many more, of course, as we approach Christmas. Despite this, a Hampshire law firm specialising in Sunday trading is currently involved in defending no less than 1,500 summonses. Well, joining me now from the firm is Tony Ascombe from Heppard, Winstanley and Pugh. Well, Mr Ascombe, whatever your opinion, this is a real mess, isn't it?
It's been a mess for some 10 years. The government tried to change the law 5 years ago unsuccessfully, and retailers have been challenging the law in the European Court now on and off since 1987.
Well, is anything going to happen after Wednesday? Are we actually going to get a resolution and clear it up?
Well, I wish I knew in advance, but I think the answer's likely to be no. I think the European Court will give some guidance to the House of Lords and then leave it to the House of Lords to finally resolve the matter.
And then what happens?
I think ultimately it's down to Parliament. This isn't one that the lawyers can ultimately win, I suspect. It's one for Parliament to actually grasp the nettle at long last and produce a law which is acceptable to consumers, shop workers and to retailers.
What do you think they're likely to do?
Three options, I think. They're looking at either a very firm law, which will be just as restrictive as the present one, which I think is unacceptable to consumers and shop workers. One which allows all small shops to open, but large shops only to open for a limited 6-hour period during the day, and then total deregulation. But I suspect the key to all of it is proper employee protection.
None of those options actually sound as if they're going to clear it up totally.
Well, total deregulation will, but I think the perceived wisdom at the present time is that's unlikely to get through Parliament.
So what's going to happen this Christmas? Are people going to be prosecuted, or won't it be done and dusted in time?
I hope it won't be done and dusted in time. I think there's a possibility that we will see 1 or 2 prosecutions, and indeed one local authority may well try and stop a store trading before Christmas. But there's likely only to be the one Sunday, the 20th, which is left for them to be able to get their claws into.
Of course, so much money can be made by trading before Christmas. Are firms just likely to ignore the fines and say, well, we make too much money, we'll just pay the fine?
I don't think it's so much that. It's just the law is so unclear at the moment that you can't expect them to put their shop workers out of work in the run-up to Christmas or to disappoint their consumers.
Well, I'm sure this is going to run and run, as they say, this Christmas and possibly next Christmas as well. Tony Ascombe, thank you very much for joining us. Well, sadly, this is the very last edition of Agenda. It's been a feature of the TVS schedule since 1983. With the programme since its start has been our man at Westminster, Brian Shallcross. In fact, by the end of this month, Brian will have chalked up 26 years of parliamentary reporting. In that time, he's interviewed no less than 9 Prime Ministers. So for once, we turn the tables on Brian and make him the subject of this report made by the programme's very first reporter, Preston Witts.
That's the House of Lords, the upper chamber of the Mother of Parliaments, where the peers of our realm meet in grand surroundings to take part in government.
15 years on, Brian Shallcross is still reporting from your Westminster. In fact, he's been doing it for one television station or another for considerably more than 20 years. But despite a revolution in television technology since the 1970s, even ITN's state-of-the-art Westminster studio doesn't always provide some facilities once taken for granted by television presenters, such as makeup artists.
What I don't know about, you see, is how to get rid of the jowly bits. The makeup girls used to know that. You just have to live with the jowls these days. Never mind. Sit.
One of the hazards of being a television interviewer is the constant worry that your interviewees won't turn up for the appointment. And this MP did, but just in the nick of time. And then there's the challenge of encapsulating different arguments and opinions within only a few minutes of airtime.
You frame on here against everybody else, but
most people will agree with me that it's not right.
Hold it, take it.
The public sector, many of these people...
Go to Brian on 2.
They can't...
When this clash of opinions was over, what had it achieved?
I think a lot of heat was generated, not a lot of light, but still, never mind.
Brian Shallcross began his broadcasting career more than 30 years ago with Tyne Tees Television, and in those days he produced and presented children's programmes. He reckons, not entirely with his tongue in his cheek, that this was perfect grounding for his later career covering politics and dealing with politicians. He joined Southern Television as a political correspondent in 1973 and continued in that role for TVS after it won the ITV franchise in 1982. There are inevitably many members of Parliament who have some cherished memories of their encounters with Brian over the years.
I've known Brian for more than 20 years. We've had some wonderful ding-dongs on the programme. Very professional interviewer. Won't let politicians get away with anything at all. I remember once, however, getting my own back a bit with Kenneth Warren when he was also an MP. We ganged up on Brian because he was attacking the Conservative Party, and we said, "You know nothing about the Conservative Party, Brian." He said, "I don't want to."
It's quite possible, I think, that I did my first political interview with Brian, and so I always have a great fellow feeling for him on that ground alone. But one thing I do remember is that I was fortunate enough in the old days of Southern Television to be asked by Brian and a man called Terry Johnson, who you will remember, to go with a Tory MP, Kenneth Warren, to the United States. And we did a wonderful film about the elections that were taking place then in 1976. We attached ourselves to a man called Hamilton J. Fish, Jr., who was the congressman for Westchester County in New York State. Had a lovely time, but the thing that always struck me, I always remember this about Brian, is that he had great enthusiasm for all those terrible diners that you see strung out along those terrible American roads. And he would go into these diners and order himself a great plate full of cottage cheese and Jell-O. And I used to watch him horror-struck as he would down this stuff. I couldn't believe that anybody could actually eat such food. But it shows what a cosmopolitan chap he is, that he was able to eat all this and enjoyed it enormously.
But whatever the politicians think, it's usually the opinions of one's colleagues that are the most valued or feared.
Brian is probably one of the most professional broadcasters I've ever known. I remember an occasion in the old Southern days when Barry Westwood was the presenter of the programme, and he introduced an item on Day by Day and said, "And now over to the studio where Brian Shallcross is talking to Lord Snudge." So cut to Brian and Lord Snudge, and Brian said, "Lord Snudge, let me ask you first of all," and proceeded to ask a question. And the man said, "Well, let me tell you first of all that I'm not Lord Snudge, I'm Mr. Bloggs." And without batting an eyelid, Brian said, "Mr. Bloggs," and went on to ask exactly the same question again. And the interview proceeded as though nothing had gone wrong. Now that's professionalism.
Some colleagues chose to offer their tributes to Brian's face, but then the circumstances were slightly more relaxed.
When I first met Brian, we were both at Tyne Tees. It's 25 years ago. Obviously, yeah, it was. But I do remember it was then that you developed this amazing sort of thrusting style of interviewing you've got, you know, which has been terrifying politicians witless for the last quarter of a century.
Another colleague from Yorkshire remembered an interview Brian did with Mrs. Thatcher at a Conservative conference after apparently taking a cue from a colleague who was dear to all of us.
First question. Mrs. Thatcher, this new policy you've announced on, say, housing, this new policy on housing, already people are saying this policy cannot possibly work. Mrs. Thatcher. She said, "People? Who are these people? Mr. Shallcross, who are these people that are saying this? Who are they saying this? Name your sources." Well, of course, the source was Luke Gardner, in his time, had been a communist. I don't know what happened. We were laughing so much, we all fell off our seats. So I don't know how Brian got out of it, but I'm sure he did.
One person who knows Brian and his work better than most is Mike Gray, who was the Agenda programme's first editor and now, among other things, is a freelance producer-presenter for BBC World Service Television's World Business Report.
Brian has an infectious enthusiasm for the House of Commons, the people who work there, the MPs, its institutions. But above all, he has his finger on the pulse, what's going on. And the art of politics, as I understand it, is that you have to know what's going to happen, not so much what's had already happened, which is why the place is such a rumour factory. Brian's information was always 100%. I would stake a year's salary on anything that Brian told me.
Mike Gray's reference to Brian's enthusiasm for the House of Commons is vividly reinforced by Brian himself.
There isn't a day goes by, and I've been here a long time, there isn't a day goes by when I don't walk through that gate and think to myself, gosh, I'm really lucky to actually work in this place. It's based in the 19th century, probably even the 18th century. It's antiquated, it's inefficient, it needs modernizing and so on. It's a bit like working in a museum piece, if you like, but it's fascinating because it's where power is. You feel you're in the center of things. And because of what we do, I genuinely believe all of us, you and me and so on, are actually an integral part of the democratic process because we ask the questions in the center of power on behalf of our viewers. MPs may have constituents. We have viewers, we have listeners, we have readers. And that's important to the democratic process.
One person who those of us associated with Agenda will always have a special affection for is Lou Gardner, the programme's first presenter, who died of cancer just over 2 years ago.
He was undoubtedly one of the top 3 political commentators and interviewers in the country. And Lou was able to interview not just the senior politicians, but also county councillors, town councillors. If they had an interest in politics, Lou would be interested in them.
Working with Lou was tremendous. His political antennae were tremendously astute. I enjoyed working with him simply because he had such an incredible reputation. It was almost like sitting at the feet of a god, if you like. So yes, tremendous working with Lou in those early days. Because you felt you were working on a very important programme, simply because Lou gave that aura to the whole show, if you like. So there was that to it. But there was also all we were trying to do on Agenda. Lots of things we tried to do, for instance, taking cameras, and we did this on many occasions, and I was responsible for it, if you like, taking cameras into parts of government where cameras had never been before, into the inner sanctum of the Treasury, to see how the Chief Secretary worked, taking cameras into the Foreign Office where they'd never been before, to see how the Foreign Secretary or the Foreign Minister worked, that sort of thing. We broke new ground on Agenda, and working with Lou was tremendously important for me because it gave me a sense of breadth for the whole show, if you like. But also the fact that we were, as I say, breaking new ground in a way in which no other regional political programme, I believe, ever did.
I know this is possibly something of a cliché question, but would you say there is any one particular politician who has impressed you enormously in the time that you've been a political correspondent?
No, there isn't, to be honest. I mean, I find politicians, I must say I admire them tremendously. I wouldn't want to do it, quite frankly. I mean, they get brickbats thrown at them when they fail on something, and when they succeed on something, everybody says all you've done it for is the vote. So they can't win. And they work damned hard, quite frankly, backbenchers and ministers. They work more than the hours there are given by God in the day. I find it phenomenal. I never understand why they do it. They're not that well paid. I admire them all, quite frankly, all across the House. I have friends all across the House. And as I say, I keep saying to them, why the hell do you do it? I'd never want to do it, quite frankly.
Oh, there's nobody like him. Well, over the years, we've reported the rough and tumble of Westminster, which really came to the fore when cameras were allowed into the chamber. And for this final programme, and as a sort of agenda Christmas card, if you like, James Montgomery has been taking a very personal sideways look at the Commons at work. How, he wondered, would the cinema newsreels have reported the goings-on if the cameras had been allowed in?
Here we are at Westminster, having a jolly good time. The lords and ladies are in their best bib and tucker, and my word, doffing their hats too. Who's that? It's our happy former Prime Minister, with Black Rod, the man dressed to knock on doors. Looks as if they're in for a long walk. Our beloved Majesty's here. By Jove, her great namesake, good Queen Bess, would have been proud of those fine robes. The Queen has a long journey too. So have her backward escorts. What a busy place. What pomp and ceremony. No wonder they call this the Palace of Westminster. And who's this? With splendid garments fit for the Queen. By Jingo, it's Mrs. Thatcher. Governed like a queen, dressed like a queen. Now her dreams have come true. And here they are, our magnificent members, waving papers in the air. Yes, we can be sure they know all the answers.
Yes, I can, and it isn't.
No blackboard here, but this is a classroom, all right.
Save the honourable Bolsover. Sit down, please. Order! And that's enough. Now, one more from this side.
Our chamber chaps and girls are certainly having a good time.
I refer the honourable lady to the reply I gave some moments ago.
The fabricant.
We citizens should be glad our members have a merry time at our expense. Mind you, where would that fun be without those serious moments from Prime Ministers, Ministers of all kinds, and those earnest little opposition people too. Lucky ministers need strong backs, but they face cheering and jeering.
Details, and I believe that they are.
And now, how's all that walking over historic carpets and stones? The Queen's arrived, so has Black Rod. He's knocking on that door. And has our Baroness finished her walk? Yes, but she's now the bowing and bobbing Baroness. No peace for the wicked. And now it's farewell from the very foundation, the fabric of our nation, our powerful peers, mighty members, our gallant chaps in the chamber, so valiantly standing for all that's great, good and strong. And farewell to our agenda boys and girls, shining from Parliament for 10 glorious years. Jolly good show.
By jingo, was it really like that? Well, I'm much too young to remember. Well, that, as they say, is that. This is the very last edition of Agenda. We do hope you've enjoyed it over the last 10 years. And it's just time for me to say now, have a very good Christmas. Bye-bye.
And from news of regional affairs to the latest national news from ITN, next on TVS.
Monsieur, un vin rouge, s'il vous plaît.
Le peloton de héros est maintenant en train de se disperser. Et ils ne sont plus qu'à 25 secondes de seconde. Olaf est en tête à côté du meilleur classement. Et ce matin, 17e. Il n'y a plus que 50 mètres maintenant. Et il semble trouver la vitesse. Et voilà que votre chaussée remonte et le dépasse. C'est donc Girotto qui l'emporte. Bravo Girotto. Cette étape a été tout à fait exceptionnelle, comme vous l'avez constaté. Et pleine de surprises.
Stalls of Chelsea wine boxes. 24 glasses at the touch of a button.
Where can you find permanently low prices on mince pies and cakes? And fruit and nuts? On all your drink? And Christmas crackers? all your food. At Asda, where prices are constantly checked to keep them low. That's Asda price.
Come on, Dad. You're playing Vicky, not Andre Agassi.
Don't be so sure.
Agassi.
Hi, call me Andre.
Nescafe, Andre?
You bet. Nescafe sure is coffee at its best. That's the best thing served to me all week. Who's up for doubles?
Yeah! The best days are Nescafe days.
I don't suppose you sell 8mm cine projectors, do you?
Shouldn't think so. What's it for?
Showing this.
Funny-looking video.
Well, do you know where I might get hold of one?
8mm projector. I sold one only last week. Don't know when another might turn up.
Sometimes to solve a problem, you need to approach it from a different angle.
Video?
Good old Yellow Pages. We can help in all kinds of unexpected ways.
Hello, Harper's. Can you transfer some old 8mm cine film to video? You can. Happy birthday, Mum.
What have we here? Naughty videos.
Let's see, shall we?
Aye, he was a good-looking fella, your dad.
Oh, for over 4,000 great value gifts, look in your Argos catalogue. It's your guide to low prices.
A commercial for an ordinary hand blender would finish about now. But this is a commercial for the Braun Multi-Quick, which by adding this, lets you do this. And by adding this, lets you do this. And this, and this, and this.
We take a journey along the 200-mile-long trail to the ancient Eskimo fishing grounds in Greenland and look at the relationship between the Eskimo and his dog at 1:10. And that's after the news from ITN.